Hello, everybody, and welcome to Broman Show 147. I hope you're doing good. It's Friday for me. We usually do this on Wednesday, so I don't know why you needed to know that, audience, but you know now. I'm joined today by Brian McGill. Brian is a doctoral student in physical therapy, or a doctorate student, and he has been reaching out to me via email because his focus and what he wants to be working on, or is working on, I suppose, the right way to say it, is how to best support gamers in, or anybody who's, I guess, sitting for long periods of time, to sort of keep control of our bodies over a long period of time. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben. It's incredibly awesome to just have this opportunity to get to talk to you and start to just kind of have a conversation about some of the things that I've been thinking about and kind of combine these two spaces of physical therapy, exercise, health and wellness, all those kinds of things with the gaming industry. I think that's kind of where we're going here.
I totally agree. As the gaming space grows up, you start to get more professional services show up. I talked about this for like a long time, right? When everyone started YouTube and Twitch, they didn't need an accountant. But then like the first really successful people were like, oops, I made a few $1,000,000 and I really need an accountant because this isn't like working at my 9-to-5 job. And as esports has grown, and I think everyone, especially because of the pandemic, has taken a much closer look at their health over the past couple of years. I think that it's kind of the perfect time to think about, well, it's always the perfect time to think about prehabbing anything in your body, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So what do you, right now, what do you think the biggest, if you could tell everybody one physical therapy thing, because I want to give like right in the beginning, like, what would you tell somebody who's sitting down, like, let's say they're me, and they stream for 6 to 8 hours or longer every day? You're sitting, you're using a mouse and keyboard or a controller. Like, what do we do, Brian?
Yes. Well,
how do we stop? How do we stop it?
So, I think the biggest thing that we have to look at is, first of all, there's no one exercise that you can do that is going to fix whatever is the problem that you're having, whether that be neck pain, back pain, wrist pain, finger pain, or just you're tired all the time. There's no one exercise that's going to fix that. That's kind of a fallacy that, or a myth that, there's an exercise for everything, right? Really what it's about, and kind of what we've been learning in PT school is that it's more so about behavior. So for instance, it's not necessarily the postures that are always causing all these problems. It's really, well, you're in that posture for too long, right? So I would argue the best thing you can do is simply stand up, right? If you stand up and take a break from sitting, yes, I notice you're standing yourself, you kind of get away from those postures that may be causing you to have some of those pains, or you might even, be giving your joints a break, your fingers, your hands, your wrists. You're giving yourself a break. That's kind of, it's not necessarily, oh, do this exercise to correct this thing. Really, it's just more about modifying that behavior and taking a break from gaming, getting up, getting blood flowing, and kind of,
we had the gamer doc on like right at the beginning of the pandemic, and she had something very similar to say about that. But let's take a step back. For somebody who like has no idea what physical therapy is, right? What is it?
Sure.
Like, what makes physical therapy different than going to my primary care doctor or going to like work out with a random dude who's going to scream at me at the gym? Like, what's the deal?
Yes. First, both of those are great options. They both serve different purposes, right? And obviously, PT is also going to serve a different purpose. So really what a physical therapist is we are doctors. I'm a doctor of physical therapy student. So that is a 3-year program of really intensive clinical and a lot of didactic coursework. So for us, we do like 4 clinical rotations where we're actually practicing in a clinic, learning how to use our skills that we've learned in the classroom. So we have lots of clinical experience going into the workforce, but really what it is we do is we are movement experts. I would say we are probably some of the most qualified people to teach movement, teach exercise, um, teach how to relieve pain.
Mm.
Um, the general idea of a physical therapist I like to give is that, well, we'll take this example of your primary care physician, right? They usually prescribe you medication, right? So they prescribe medication in a certain dose, or they give you a prescription, and they probably will have you come back in and see how you responded to that dose of medication, right? Whether it
Yeah.
be for high blood pressure or whatever. For us, our medication is exercise. That's the medication that we're prescribing for certain,
Mm.
whether it be injuries, pains, or other pathologies in the body. We are prescribing exercise to hopefully allow that to basically facilitate healing and get that person stronger and back to reach their goals.
Yeah. That's a great summary. I have been doing physical therapy for myself because I had surgery right before the pandemic. And I didn't get a chance to do the rehab because we all got locked down.
Yeah.
So yeah, so and that's it was a really weird thing to sort of realize like, oh, I'm having all these weird things happening in my body. It was just like a year later. And I was like, what's wrong? And it's like I never learned how to walk right again after
Yes.
like being off of my leg for so long. And you wouldn't think that being like I wasn't completely inactive, but like I was moving weird for like 6 weeks, right? Because I had a boot on and I'm going up and down stairs with it, right? And then when everything came off, it was like a sedentary lifestyle. So I never rebuilt that move. Like I was strapped at home. Everyone was strapped at home.
Yeah. Yep.
You
Oh
know,
yeah.
and I never rebuilt those skills. And so 2 years after that, it's or I guess like a year and a half after that, I started developing pain, which well, I was like, why can't I fix this with exercise? And it was because I was like moving wrong, and I had found that I discovered that a lot of my ligaments and muscles in my right leg had shortened because they had just been
Yeah.
not used. And
Exactly.
there's not like that most stuff with your body, like if you get sick, there's like a pill, or if you like want to work out, you can just get stronger. But physical therapy is completely different. And I used to power lift for a long
Okay.
time, and I always looked at physical therapy and like prehab stuff, and I would do it, but I would never what's the right word? I never really took it super seriously, but now I'm like, oh God, I'm glad I at least listen to these people, because um when you stop moving, your body stops thinking it has to move.
Yes. Your body is great at adapting, and it adapts to what you do, right? And if you don't move your muscles, you're not going to waste that energy on preserving the right length of your muscles, or the right or the most or the really the amount of strength in your muscles. It's your body's not going to preserve that function because, well, it thinks that it's not needed. So that's why, yes, you're absolutely right. Movement is so important, even at those early stages of your recovery. That's really why a physical therapist is there to help you during that
Yeah.
time because it's you have to be careful, right? You don't want to do too much too soon and risk further injury. That would be bad, and I'm sure your
Yeah.
doctor would not have been happy if you failed whatever,
Yeah. Don't
injured
finish your
yourself even
antibiotics,
more.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
exactly. It's
exactly.
that kind of thing.
So yeah, yeah.
What so we're talking about the intersection of physical therapy and movement based therapy and esports, and I guess from a broader scale, gaming. So what do you feel like the emergent problems are right now
Mhm.
in gaming, right? We have people like me who do it as like a fun job, right? But I don't have to be playing with high levels of accuracy all the time and things like
Mhm.
that. And then you have individuals on esports teams that are practicing upwards of 12 hours a day.
Mhm.
Um, and just like any other sport, you're going to get overuse injuries and all this other stuff. So, what are some things that have started to come out of the esports space as like, oh, these are like the leading causes of injury? And how are those
Yeah.
being dealt with right now?
So as far as looking at what's going on right now in the esports world, you already mentioned it. It's those repetitive. overuse type injuries because, like you said, these people are or these athletes are really doing basically the same thing as professional athletes. They're putting the same amount of time and work and effort in as Michael Jordan was on the free throw line, right? So it's just that they're doing smaller, more micro movements, but they're still causing that repetitive stress to those small joints in your fingers and wrists, and even think about the posturing that they're gamer posture is one of those things that kind of is
Leaning
made
in.
fun of, but yeah, this kind of rounded shoulder, head forward, and right, that posture is not necessarily bad in itself, but when you do it for days upon days and end, and you're not changing and getting up and moving, that's when we start to see those chronic back pain and things like that start to take shape. So really the two most common issues, like you said, are those repetitive stress injuries. Those can show up in things like carpal tunnel syndrome, which is like an inflammation of your carpal tunnel, which houses some ligaments and your median nerve that innervates a lot of the muscles and does some sensory innervation in your hand. And then also things just like you can have inflammation in your joints. And then obviously those more postural syndromes that we're seeing with neck pain, low back pain, those are kind of the
Yeah.
more problems we're seeing right now.
I'm super interested in neck problems right now because
Yeah.
I have throughout my streaming career I've had so many different monitor setups.
Right.
I've had I had like two vertical ones, and I've moved everything around. I always try and like every 3 months move where I put my primary windows, so I'm not always like looking at the same spot. Um, but what is it like? You have to like lean in and look, right? So I
You
guess for
do,
me,
yes.
the question I always have is what's the line between, you know, what's like safe and acceptable amounts of like
Mm,
using your neck, like you can get it into the position, so you should be able to do it. But like, so
exactly. Yes.
what do we need to be doing to like prevent further injury or prevent like
Yeah.
permanent postural changes? Well, I guess that's my first question. Are any of these changes permanent?
That is a
If
great
we're
question.
talking about
Yeah.
like, if I'm just starting to develop neck pain, if I'm just starting to like, oh wow, like I'm really tired,
Yeah.
like what is the point to where you should seek intervention?
Yes. So the hard thing with that is it are you experiencing that pain because of the postures that you have been in throughout your whole life? Or
Mm,
is that just a natural phenomenon of aging, right?
right.
Is it just because you're getting older and your joints are I mean, just it's kind of common knowledge that as we age, things start to just deteriorate, right?
Mm,
I would say what's not normal is maybe a 20-year-old who's having neck pain for some unknown idiopathic reason, right?
right.
Um, but kind of getting at some of the things that we might be able to do, like I think the biggest thing is setting up your environment to just really set you up for success. So PTs do a lot of things, like we know a lot about how the body should be aligned, and I think that things that often get overlooked is how can we set up a sound ergonomic environment. There's a lot of different opinions, I would guess, but my guess is that you really want your head to be in some type of neutral posture. So, not too forward, not too back like this. You don't want to be always constantly looking to one side and not constantly looking to the other. Things of that nature. You obviously want, and I'm not very good at this, but you want your monitor probably elevated to eye level. That's going to be the most, that's good because that's just going to set you up to be in the most neutral
So
position.
I have a
Yeah.
question about eye level because people ask,
Yeah.
like, like my camera's not in a normal position, so everybody thinks I'm cranking my neck like this
Right.
sometimes, but I'm not. Uh, what part of the monitor is at eye level? Is it the top? Is it the bottom? Is it the middle? Is it like where your crosshair is? Like, what are we trying? Like, what's
That's a
the
good point.
answer?
Th-
Because I get asked all the time.
I'm gonna say this a lot probably in this podcast because I hear it a lot from my professors, but it depends, right?
Oh, okay,
It depends.
great.
It depends on the game, I would imagine, right? Um,
Hmm.
for most games, you're probably always looking in the center of the screen, right? If you're playing in a first-person shooter or something like that, right? You're probably always looking at kind of the
Yeah.
center where your crosshair is. So you probably want your eye level right in the middle of the screen, I would say. But if for whatever reason your game requires that you are looking at uh, the bottom of the screen more, the top of the screen more, you probably want that to be eye level. Eye level. I'd say it's wherever you're spending the most amount of time on that screen. That's where you want that center piece to be for your
Mm,
eyes.
okay, that makes sense. So
Yes.
in that vein, if we're trying to take the best care of our body, does that mean that for your like your primary gaming monitor, it would make more sense to get something like I have like a monitor arm for my gaming thing, right?
Sure.
It can go up and down and it can like spin,
Yes.
whatever. So is that's something that might be a worthwhile investment against a standard mount?
For sure. I think if you financially can afford something like that, that would be an accessory that would definitely improve your ability to just to be more mobile, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with like if you want to put put your monitor up a little bit to the left today, just because that's
Mhm.
what you want to do, right? Um, I think it would allow just you to have a more mobile kind of interface with your
Yeah.
screen and allow you to kind of just have more movement in general.
That's a reasonable. I think one of the things I'm always looking for when I'm recommending stuff for people's setups is like
Hmm.
what's the biggest bang for your buck. And for me, a lot of last year and this year has been like I want to invest in my health. And it's
Yeah.
crazy how many locations you can actually do that. And one of the best decisions that I made was, finally installing a standing desk. Um, but then the next one I did was buying this monitor arm helped me so much because I was used to having like one static position and
Yep.
I would get so tight back here and I'd be like, oh my God, at the end of
Hmm.
every stream, and then having a little bit of fluidity. So uh, and honestly, if you're at home and you're shopping for one, like they go on sale pretty often. And at
Yeah.
this point, they end up about the same cost as any other mounting device that you're looking for. Um,
Hmm.
this is another question. What about gaming on the couch? Like, what about all of the living room folks that are watching on a console or
Yes.
listening? There right now. What is like? Obviously, this is when you're at a desk, you have a lot of control.
Hmm.
When you're in a living room, you don't. Like, what do we need to be doing in
Yeah.
the heart of the home to keep
Yes.
everybody safe or to try
So
and keep ourselves moving?
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, gaming in itself is kind of a comfort activity, right? It kind of allows you to alleviate stress. So gaming on the couch is perfectly fine, right? But if you're doing it all the
Okay.
time, right, there might be some ways that we can kind of improve that area a little bit. Um, trying to get because a lot. I think when I sit on the couch, right, I'm slumped over like this. I kind of fall into the crevice of the couch, right? So trying to get some type of back support. It can be maybe a harder pillow, or maybe even just taking a towel roll, rolling it up and putting it behind your lower back. Um, that might just help you kind of be able to remain in more of a neutral spine posture, avoiding some of those kind of prolonged flexion based that kind of tend to stress the spine just a little bit more. So that's one of those things that just is kind of an easy fix. You
So
can
you're talking
do
about
that when you're
shrimping,
feeling.
right? Like curling up
Yes.
like a shrimp. Like the shrimping
Yep.
is bad. Try
Yes.
and try to interrupt the shrimping with some towels.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's an easy fix right there.
I I am guilty of that. What about? I'm just going to start asking you questions about
Yeah.
what I do. What about like those of us that sit with one leg tucked underneath us while we game?
Ah,
Yeah, yeah. You see the
I am
everyone
guilty.
watching. You see the face. Yeah.
I am guilty of that as well. And I will say, I try to I think the biggest thing is being aware of that. Being aware of
Okay.
your posture that you are in, and saying that, okay, I know I kind of this is kind of my crutch. This is kind of what I constantly do when I'm sitting in this chair. Try to do
Mm.
the opposite. So if it's always your left leg that you're kind of crossing underneath, see what it feels like when you cross your right leg underneath.
Oh,
It's probably going to feel really weird because
yeah.
I
I
do it all
don't.
the time, but I'm trying to force myself to realize that this is okay. And I can tell I'm so much more tighter in my hip in that region just because I
Yep.
never do it on that leg. and then my other leg is like I can swing it all the way back, and so I think being aware is kind of the first thing, and then saying, okay, I always do it on this side. Let me see if I can do it on the other side a little bit more and try to even it out. I think trying to find that balance is really important. Like I said, there's not going to be one exercise that's going to
Yeah.
correct that, but more of that behavioral modification there.
Awareness
Yeah.
and movement, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So from the research that everyone did before the show, uh, it
Yeah.
seems that there are more injuries that tended to come with age that are happening with younger and younger patients right now.
Hmm.
Um, what's going on there? I feel like I'm doing okay, and I don't feel
Yeah.
like I don't feel like any kid at home is like gaming more than I am or whatever during during my
Right.
life. So yeah, like is it what's going on there? When what injuries are showing up early? I
Yes.
guess first that's
So I
probably the
will
best place to
say
start.
this is more targeted towards your typical sporting athletes,
Okay.
and it may be playing a role in our young esport athletes as well. But
Hmm.
typically, you think about the sport like baseball, right? A lot of repetitive stress from throwing on the elbow and the shoulder, and we're seeing more and more kids starting to play these sports year round. So they're doing
Mm.
constant involvement of the same movements over and over and over again. They're right, this repetitive stress or overuse type injuries, and these are really more adult injuries, right? No kid should
Yeah.
really be complaining of elbow pain and getting Tommy John surgery at the age of 16. That's not really
Right.
normal. And this absolutely could be playing a role for our esport athletes as well. I mean, you think about how early we started gaming. I wasn't even in school yet when I picked up a controller or something like that. And,
Oh yeah.
you
I was
know,
like
yeah,
5.
we've been doing it. Yeah, we've been doing it ever since then. And especially now, these esport athletes who are maybe doing it at the ages of 15 through 20 and stuff like that, they might be a little more prone to those repetitive use injuries as well. But again, there's not a lot of research on that. So that's
Hmm.
still kind of developing in
That
our
was going to be my
understanding of what's
follow up.
going on. Yeah.
So one might guess from the assumed cause, which is no rest at all, that some sort
Mhm.
of structured long form rest is like necessary for like the longevity of singular function movements like throwing,
Mhm.
right? I could
Yes.
definitely see if you're playing, I mean, it's like 3 times more, right? If you're playing all year, you're training, I
Yes.
guess you're
Yeah.
training 2 or 3 more full seasons worth of throwing. You're packing 4 years into one. Uh, whereas for me, when I was growing up, even the best athletes in our schools, they would play every sport. They'd play soccer,
Exactly.
then they would play baseball, then they would play football, then they like whatever. Like it was always just cycling through the different sports instead of sticking on one. But yeah, I guess high school sports and college scholarships are way more competitive now, so everyone's looking for the edge.
That's the thing, right? And that's, I guess, where PT can kind of come into play, right? Is there some sort of preventative measures that we can take
Right.
for the young athletes? And I think absolutely, right? If we can, from a physical therapy perspective, we're looking at musculoskeletal complaints. So if I take my baseball player who's been having elbow pain, and there's really no stopping him playing 3 seasons, right? His parents are set on it. He's set on it. We got to roll with it,
Right.
right? We got to find some way that we can maybe get him stronger and get him ability to tolerate those 3 seasons. So that's really where PT kind of comes to play in that mind. And we can strengthen, we can stretch, we can do all those things. But, at that point, it's kind of just like, are we just kind of just keeping them
Yeah.
going at a certain point and then they're going to, eventually
That
crash
was
and burn? Or,
that's kind of my next question
yeah,
is there a diminishing return, right,
right.
on constant. Yeah, that feels like an impossible to solve problem, right? Because the overuse is happening. There's no way to prevent it happening because they're going to keep doing what they're doing. Everyone, like, if it's your job, it's your
Yeah.
job, right? You're going to do it like
Yeah,
it's your
exactly.
job. So that's really interesting. Are there studies that talk about the lengthening of people's careers or the lengthening of functional movement for folks that are engaged in long-term PT and stuff like that?
I am not sure.
Ooh.
That would be some pretty interesting research. But what I will say is that a lot of times what we tell our patients is that once PT stops, that does not mean that you have to stop, that you should stop doing these exercises that we've given you, right?
Mm.
A lot of times people take, for instance, the 50-year-old with back pain, right? Let's say that
Yes.
they, there's a lot of them out there, right? So let's say that they improve with PT and, they're having lower levels of pain, they have more function, they're able to walk longer, they're able to do all these things, and they feel like they're good. Um, but that's when they were doing those exercises. If they stop doing those exercises, it's likely that they're going to fall into back into the same habits, and that pain may start coming back. So it's kind of this idea that there's really no stopping PT. You kind of have to carry it throughout the the kind of your whole life,
Right.
and realize that there are going to be these peaks and valleys in your health. And sometimes we're at a peak and we're feeling really good, and maybe we kind of take tone down a little bit, and then maybe there's sometimes we have these valleys where we're experiencing pain and dysfunction and things like that, and maybe
Yep.
that's when we need to ramp up our prehab or exercise and habits as like that. Yeah.
Or like just finally admit to yourself that it's time to like regress a little bit. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
that's been a big difference maker for me is that I would look up exercises to do for PT and I would try them and I like these don't feel like they're working. And everything I was just so weak that it was
Right.
too but I had no comprehension of like what that weakness felt right because I think for me growing up right like weakness is just the inability to exert power on something but
Mhm.
um because it was lifting right oh this is too heavy I'm weak or like I should get stronger for this but the it's not when it's inside your body when it's like tiny muscles that aren't supporting the right thing
Mhm.
it's insidious because you just think like ouch my knees hurt after I squat that's where I started
Right.
or like my heel won't really stay on the ground anymore when I'm trying to do a squat. And in reality, it's like movement. You have like movement restriction, and
Yep.
I mean, for me, like the whole posterior chain of my right leg was like totally screwed up. So I
Right.
had to
Yep.
start like relearning how to do squats and everything. But you know, I couldn't even do my body weight. It was very embarrassing, but
Right.
like you need to
Right.
be willing to do that.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of times it maybe even be you have to be willing to go and seek out some help too. So,
Yeah.
and I think we're at a time where PT is becoming more accessible to a lot of different people. I believe in most states that, it used to be that you had to go to your primary care physician
Mm,
and get a referral for PT. That's really not the case anymore. You can simply walk into a PT clinic and say you want to make an appointment at most places, and they would be more than happy to, take you in. It's not necessarily you have to have some type of, um, you know, disorder that's going on with you and a referral from a primary care physician. So PT is definitely becoming more accessible to be able to help reach out to more people and hopefully, as we see in the future, hopefully the gaming space as well.
yeah. And there's a lot of great resources out there as well. You have to watch out for quacks, but I like TikTok
Yes.
for like for doing my research on stuff that works. Do you have any content creators that you're like, wow, these people make great PT content for somebody who's listening to this
Yes.
right now and they're like, I want to hop into doing this. I want to take it
Yes.
seriously. I want to deal with my pain. Like, where are they going? Where would you send them?
So great question because there's so much content out there on not just PT but exercise and fitness as a whole. And I
Ugh.
think, yeah, some of it's good, some of it's great, some of it's can
Mhm.
be concerning. But
Problematic
for if
and
I were to,
unhelpful.
yeah,
Yeah,
yes, if I were to direct someone, and I think there's a great Instagram page. I think they have a YouTube too. It's called the Prehab Guys. I
I
don't
like
know if
them.
you have heard of them, but they
I
are
have.
fantastic. They have a lot of great friendly content, so it's not, it doesn't have all these medical terms and all these things. It's not. It's very user friendly, and it's actually evidence-based practice. These are real PTs, doctors of physical therapy, who are taking time out of their day to make content for a variety of different problems that anyone would experience, from foot pain, knee pain, back pain, all the way up the kinetic chain. I think that they're some of the best people that, if you're just trying to get into it, their Instagram page has a lot of great resources for everyone.
I like the prehab guys. How do you
Yeah.
feel about the what's his name? Knees over toes guy on
Knees over
TikTok?
toes guy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I haven't done. I've heard of him, but I have
Mhm.
not really seen a lot of his content. I think that he's doing a great job of kind of, I think that I think the problem that he's addressing is that people have the idea that there are bad exercises and there are good exercises for certain
Yeah.
things. I don't think there's a bad exercise or a good exercise for anything really.
Yeah.
Maybe there's good exercises, but there certainly isn't a bad exercise. It's really how you perform, and how much of that exercise you do, which can be bad. So generally, putting your knees over your toes does put more stress on the knee joint and the quads, because the quads have to do more work. Because if you think about it, it's basically a physics problem, right? If that lever arm is farther away from your center of mass, your
Mm,
body, it's going to require more force to keep you from falling over, right? So
right.
that's why it's a bit more stressful on your knees. But I think he's doing a great job of kind of helping that there should be no fear in movement. There should be, all movement it should be acceptable. And I think he's doing a great job at kind of targeting that
Yeah.
problem.
It's been I've been following his program for my knees, and it's been super
Okay, awesome.
helpful. Like
Yeah, I bet.
working backwards and working really slowly. Like I would have never been like, oh wow, like wow, my right ankle's actually terrible. And like that's what's messing with my knee. I
Yes,
wouldn't have
yes.
had the awareness. Like he's got the tests, and it's crazy to me what I've discovered from trying to get back into and like learning some of this is how um I feel like when I was being coached, I got bad cues, bad movement cues from my coaches. And part
Hmm.
of fixing everything has been unlearning some of those bad movement cues.
Sure.
Um, so I know physical therapists are the specialists. What are some of the best like movement cues that you have learned for like, let's like primary exercises. Like let's say if someone
Yeah,
wants to
squats.
squat,
Yeah.
right? Someone wants to do a really good push up. Like what are the movement cues that you use to make
Yeah.
sure that you're moving the right way?
That's a great question, because this is a really interesting topic. And something we actually learn a lot about is, how do we facilitate someone to learn a new movement, or actually relearn a new movement?
Yeah.
And a lot of the research says that there are two types of cues that can be given: an external cue and an internal cue. So an external cue focuses the learner's attention on an external object, whereas an internal cue focuses on some type of internal process in the body. And actually, the research shows that when we focus on utilizing external cues in our instructions, they have better performance, and better performance over a period of time as well. So that the ability to transfer that task is much better. So, for an example of doing a squat, right, we might think that an external or an internal cue might be to, maybe just try to, squeeze the glutes or something like that, right? Like
Right.
squeeze your quads, right? Whereas an external cue might be that to sit down to the floor, right? That might be an external cue that we use, because we're directing the attention of the learner away from the body and to an external object.
Right.
Another use of external cues is actually like a tactile or physical cue. So you see those resistance bands that people put around their knees. That's actually a really great external cue to facilitate someone's knees from collapsing in. It's kind of just a way of, preventing or helping with that more better squat posture in general.
Yeah. That's been that squats was the huge one for me because I was like only I was so worried about my right knee. It was like I forgot about the rest of
Yeah.
my body moving. And I was doing all sorts of jacked up weird stuff. And it wasn't until I started again like regressing. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, so I saw something that was like, put your hands on your hips to keep
Yep.
yourself aware of like where you are pointing, where you're
Yes.
actually pointing your center of motion. And I was like,
Yep.
oh wow, I'm like tucking this hip here. And
Right.
it be like just like the resistance bands. I think it's really interesting when you stop and slow down and listen to your body and
Mhm.
try to actually like feel where it's at in space, which was
Yes.
really difficult for me. That was like a
Yes.
totally new
Yes.
experience for me. It was always I guess I always got external cueing, right? Like pick this up,
Yep.
move towards this, right? It was never
Yeah.
not a lot of internal thought stuff, but just being able to
Yeah.
feel and then take the knowledge that you get from your physical therapist and
Yep.
really apply it to making your movement better every day. I am super curious what made you decide to get into physical therapy?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. I guess the typical response, right, is for a lot of us PT students, we had some type of injury or experience where we had
Mm,
PT in the past in our childhood, maybe, and that kind of opened us up to this idea that wow, this exercise is really cool. Like I can actually use this to fix certain problems in my body and correct postures and correct muscle imbalances and that whole idea was just incredibly amazing to me. I think I had multiple injuries in my childhood sporting, endeavors, and I had PT several times, and I think just through those experiences, I
mm,
was so amazed by what exercise can really do for the body, and specifically how really targeted exercise can help um, change the body and change movement to allow it to be more optimal for whatever it is, whatever task you're trying to accomplish. Um, so that's kind of I think a lot of people don't realize that PT. I kind of had this idea that I'd just be helping athletes rehab and do all these
mm.
different things, and I think my perception of PT now has changed so much because it's not just athletes we work with. We work with everyone across the board from young children with developmental disorders all the way up to geriatrics, older adults in nursing homes. We work in so many different settings, from acute inpatient hospitals to skilled nursing facilities to even doing home health PT. We work across the board, and that's really opened my eyes and seeing that okay,
Mm.
there's so many opportunities in this field. You can really choose there's so many different options.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything. Like
Yeah.
as a patient, like I totally agree with everything you said. Movement is something that you do all the time,
Yeah.
and often we are made unaware of it because of stress or because our focus is lying elsewhere, and because of that, you can end up with some long-term problems. And so taking all of Brian's advice and applying it liberally to your everyday life is smart. Um I'm just looking through our questions here. Um okay. I'll ask you a couple more personal questions, I guess. What
Sure.
so what is your favorite thing to do when it comes to physical activity? Since we're talking about
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, you could say I love doing physical therapy and it's all I ever do, but I don't know if I'd believe you. So like what do you do?
Yeah, no, that would not be a great answer. Personally, I mean, I played a bunch of sports. I played baseball, I played basketball, and then I kind of fell in love with running. Running
Mm,
was one of those sports that I think there's a great community aspect behind running and all those things. And it's just such an easy method of exercise to do. I mean, you just
yeah.
have to go out there and strap on some shoes and you're good. However, I will say it is probably the hardest and most injury prone exercise that you
Yeah.
can choose to do. I myself have just, experienced a plethora of nagging injuries over the course of trying to run and compete in races. So it's definitely a challenge, but more now I've taken on weightlifting and things of that nature. And I think an important part also to understand is that you don't have to be doing, all this vigorous exercise all the
Yeah.
time, 5 days a week. I think that there's so many other methods of physical activity that you can do simply just going for a walk. I try to go for a walk in the morning, 30 minutes. Let's put on a podcast, and it really helps get me in the right mindset. It helps get me just kind of get your blood going and get you ready in the morning. Another activity I've really enjoyed doing is disc golf.
Oh,
That's
nice.
yeah, it's just kind of a fun free that we picked up. Me and my buddies picked up over the pandemic, and it's been just a really fun way to get outside
Yeah, that's a
and
solid pandemic activity. That's
yes,
some
absolutely,
genius moves. I like that.
and it's free, so uh, can't go wrong there with
Yeah, you
those.
can't go wrong. You got the
What about you? Are you still weightlifting?
I don't do weightlifting anymore. I did powerlifting for a long
Okay.
time. But I've been doing a lot of calisthenics now. I tried to do I did a challenge at the beginning of the year where I like walked on my hands for 1 minute
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
extra every day. And I did that. I got up to like 28, and then my body crapped out because it was a lot. But that was fine. And then I rested for a couple days, and then starting in February, I started doing like full body calisthenics workout 3 times a week. So that's been
Nice.
great. And it's nice to I wake up, I take it at my own pace. And if I have to include like any physical therapy exercises, or if I just feel like I have a little extra energy, or if my recovery is dragging between sets, I'll throw something in there that
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a lot of exertion, but I know it's going to pay me benefits later, by
Yeah.
helping my posture and all that stuff. So that's what I do now, and I fucking love it. I power
Yeah.
lifted for such a
That's
long
awesome.
time. Um, yeah, like, all the calisthenics and gymnastic stuff that I'm trying to learn how to do it. Like, my big goal right now is to get to a handstand push up, which, like, we're far away, but it's a
Yeah.
huge goal. And for me, it's been great to learn, and it's really relevant to this conversation. Like, you have to take slow steps forward towards something like
Yep.
this. Like, if I had been doing this my whole life, I'd be able to do it no problem, but I haven't.
Mhm.
And so it's definitely been teaching me patience, and it's made me more aware of how other things in my body feel, right? Like, because
Yes.
you're super aware of your upper body all the time. And when you introduce something like that, you're like, oh, ow, my shoulder hurts. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's how my hip hurts. Well, what did I do to my shoulder? And you're like, oh, I did this. And then I don't know. It's crazy. And
Yes.
you make all of these connections, and you become more aware of your body. And I don't know. I look forward to it I look forward to the end of my workout, because that's when I do all the movement stuff, and I'm like, all right, I'm
Yeah.
tired, but like one more set and it's handstand time. I'm gonna fall on my ass 10 times like I did today. Um,
Yeah.
but but
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I would recommend it to anybody. It's also awesome because you don't have to go anywhere uh and see anyone or
Yeah.
buy any equipment if you don't want to. Um, it's awesome.
Yeah,
So that's
no,
my recommendation.
absolutely. The less equipment you can use, the better, right? It's just gonna
Yeah.
it's again, like you said, it even allows you to be more aware of your body because you get to just spend more time. You kind of get to explore. You don't have to be in a gym. You can be in your own room. You can
Yeah.
kind of explore different movements, and I think that's really what it's all about is becoming more body aware of your body and what's going on with it is a huge part of what we try to teach. And because really, I mean, I can't sit there and say, "Oh, is this painful? Is this hurting you
Yeah.
for the rest of your life?" Right? You eventually have to take on that role. So it's awesome that it sounds like you're doing a great job of that.
Yeah, that's what I mean, I want to be able to take care of myself. I want to be happy, moving
Yes,
around,
yes.
doing handstands well into my 90s. So like I want to
I think you can do it. For sure.
well, you gotta try, right? I always have to set a
Yes.
goal. And then, maybe I won't be able to do it after I turn like 95. I'll just
Yeah,
have to
maybe we
like,
can.
I'll just
Yeah,
still, do
you'll probably
like
still be
100
streaming
push-ups or
though, maybe,
something.
but
Hopefully, I don't
yeah,
know if they'll be streaming then. We might just all talk to each other with brain chips, and then people will like
that is
tune
a
into your
possibility.
brain chip feed, and I'll be like, "Oh, what's up, everybody? Yeah, let's be funny together or something." I have no idea. Like, I'm old.
I'll just yeah.
Want to experience some memories of before the internet with me? Okay, here we go. Like, I have no idea, but I would be down. That'd be a blast.
It is, yeah, crazy stuff.
It'd be my favorite. We're coming up on the end of our time here. So I just want to give you the opportunity. We always give our guests right now. If you have anything going on that you want to promote, anything that you're working on, anything you want to share with everybody. And I would definitely recommend leaving everyone with one more tip if you could. And
Yes,
then
I
I
can
will sign us out
absolutely
of
do
here.
that. Again, my name is Brian. I don't really have any type of social media presence or anything like that. I'm just a guy who's in school, right? But I think if I guess I'll give a little plug to physical therapy in itself, and that I think that it's a great tool for people to use. I really hope that in the future that there's more accessibility for all patients of all levels, because I think that would just be a great asset for people to have to be able to be pain free, to continue being able to move. And we're seeing that it's becoming more accessible just with direct access clinics and all of that stuff
Mm.
too. Um, so that's kind of my plug for PT. And just I think it's important to have it'd be great to have a working relationship with a physical therapist or someone you can go to for information or education. Yeah, we're kind of a unique medical provider because we actually get to spend a lot of time with our patients. Primary care physicians don't always get that amount of time that they do with their
Mm.
patients. So we can spend a lot of time just simply talking, educating. I know a lot of time I've spent in my clinic has just been focused on purely educating and not necessarily focusing on movement. So use physical therapists. They're an asset to society, and I think that you're going to see more and more of it as we move on. Hopefully in the gaming space too.
Yeah.
If I had to leave you guys with one more tip, um, I think that we already mentioned a few good ones. We mentioned, trying to be able to be more, just getting up from your chair, trying to, to just be more have more movement in your, yes,
Yeah. Move
absolutely.
around.
Have more movement in your daily life. Find something that you enjoy doing is really what it comes down to. Whether that be going for a walk, playing some disc golf, playing a sport, dancing, anything that you can to do to get your body moving. Try to find something that you enjoy to and make that a staple in your kind of daily routine. I think is what it comes down to.
I completely agree.
Yeah,
I almost said chat, but chat's not here. Thank you so
I
much
wish
for
chat was
tuning in.
here.
I wish. Thank you so much for tuning in today, everybody. My name is Professor Broman. I was joined today by Brian McGill, future Dr. Physical Therapy. Um, please take this seriously. I wanted to do this podcast for a reason. Taking care of your body is important. As I've stated a couple times through this podcast, I've learned, a hard lesson this year about what happens when you don't. So, and this ties all the way back to the beginning of the pandemic. You can go back and listen to me and the Gamer Doc talk at the beginning of the pandemic. Having one session with the physical therapist, this was her advice. Having one session with physical therapist where you just go in and they give you some instructions after they do a movement profile on you or something like that.
Mhm.
Following their instructions afterwards and doing those exercises can change your life. So, take some time, invest in yourself. I promise you're going to like it. It's turned my life around. It's turned my life around in a
Yes.
positive way for sure. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please send this to anybody who you thought about during the podcast, and you can leave a rating or subscribe if you want. But until next time, I'm Professor Broman. I already said that. This is a long outro. Goodbye.